Melisa Goldie, thanks for
Hi.
joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You're the CMO of Calvin Klein, and you've actually been there for 15 years.
Yes.
And in the CMO role for 2.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about how Calvin Klein's rich history really sort of creates both opportunity and challenges for the brand, sort of in this new media world that we're living in.
Absolutely. So, Calvin Klein does have a huge history and heritage in marketing and advertising. And I would say what we're most known for is being a cultural catalyst. So we've always been on the edge of culture, leading culture, and being a catalyst for conversation all the time.
Yeah.
So we keep that at the core of everything we do, right? And it requires us to sort of be looking ahead, looking behind, looking around the corner, and really sort of observing what's happening out there culturally.
Totally.
So that is a huge opportunity, but one that is a bit overwhelming and always challenge us to think about what's next, right?
Yep.
So how can we do better next time? How, there's a lot of responsibility in being a cultural leader.
Yes.
That comes with that.
And I have to think too, you're talking a lot about culture and things like that. Obviously, as we see younger generations coming up, these are the folks who aren't aware of, Calvin Klein's, its iconic nature,
Right.
As it was made manifest in the 80s
Yes,
and, the
correct.
90s. And so does that present for you an opportunity to reinvent, or do you feel like this needs to sort of educate, the next generation of consumers about sort of the Calvin Klein ethos?
Yeah, so I would say it's a little bit of both. So it gives us an opportunity to, I wouldn't say reinvent, I would say make the brand relevant to a new consumer, which requires a different way of communicating with them. But it also is a bit of education. So if you look at what we've done most recently with Justin Bieber, right? So 2.5, 3 years ago, millennials didn't even really know who we were. They had heard of us.
Yep.
They thought of us as, the parents' brand, right? And I heard that and I was just gutted. I was like, oh my God, right? They didn't know who Marky Mark was. They knew he was like this guy on Entourage. There you go, that show, right? So, it was a bit of an education. So we looked at that and we were like, okay, how can we really start making our brand relevant for a new consumer?
Yep.
So, and that was part of the reason we went and partnered with Justin. And what happened there is we had this amazing moment where you had kids, millennials, talking to their parents about a brand who knew Marky Mark. And they were having these dialogues in the home about a brand that is multi-generational and about many decades.
Very cool.
And so it was a really, really exciting challenge we had, and about education, because we were looking back to go forward, but also
a new kind of engagement.
Yeah, a new kind of engagement and new relevancy. And now we have this great new we have a great new body of consumers and our audience who's engaging with the brand.
So talk about the role of content for you guys, because I talk to a lot of marketers about that, obviously, and I think that term content can be defined so many different ways, right? How are you viewing that as a vehicle for sort of getting that education out, getting that engagement out?
Yeah. So content creation is incredibly important to us. So Calvin Klein has always been a brand about image making.
Yeah.
Always. It set the tone for most fashion brands out there, and I would argue that other consumer goods brands have probably looked at the history of Calvin Klein advertising through the iconic image making. So that's always at the root of everything we do. And what we're doing now is we're really looking at ourselves as brand as publisher, really creating content that is relevant every single day per channel. So
regarding lifestyle and
regarding the lifestyle or whatever product we want to communicate about. It just depends on what we're doing in our life cycle, whether it's product related, whether it's cultural related. It just depends on what's happening in our calendar at the moment. But we're constantly creating content like a magazine, and we're feeding our channels with different content. So what we'll do on Snapchat is very different than what we do on Facebook, is very different than what we do in a print magazine, is very different than what we do in taxi TVs.
So do you create that in-house? Do you work with partners, external partners? How are you sort of making all that happen?
Yeah, we create majority of our content in-house. We will bring in outside partners when we feel like we need fresh eyes, fresh perspective on what's happening out there and around the brand, but majority of the content is created in-house.
Very cool. You talk about Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
How are you viewing, influencer marketing these days? This is such a hot topic.
Yeah.
How are you viewing that?
Well, incredibly important for us. I don't know if you've heard about our #MyCalvins program. So in 2014, we launched this program called #MyCalvins. And we really looked at what was happening out there with our brand. And we saw our audience or our consumers engaging with the brand by taking selfies of themselves with our iconic logo and sharing it. With their friends and that sort of thing. So we saw this behavior and we're like, okay.
It was already happening.
It was happening.
Sure.
And we were like, there's this incredible thing happening out there, and we recognized it and we just elaborated on it. And so how we did that is we engaged with some influencers to really spread the message out there. So
how does that sort of dovetail with the use of a Justin Bieber, for example?
So we wouldn't have had Justin Bieber if it didn't start with the influencers. What was amazing is that the social media landscape is very competitive, and so they all watch each other. And really, he actually came after us by doing his own #MyCalvins.
Wow.
And he teased us as a brand, and we saw that and we were like, he wants a Calvin campaign.
There you go.
And so we knew that there was an open to listen, and we knew that we as a brand, because we are risk takers, that it was the right time for us to do that. And we were the only brand that probably could take the challenge of him and his broad demographic on.